Now, I've got a question for you, and I know you've got to have lots to say on this. Hira has asked, what is a good starting fee to charge? And I'm going to add on the end of that, should you be charging a fee per hour?
Well, I'm sure you know the answer to this, Nick. I don't believe in hourly fees for most things. There are some exceptions, but for most things, I don't believe in an hourly fee. I believe that people want a fixed price. You know, if I have somebody coming to price putting a fence up in my garden, it would really do my head in if they said it's £5 for every post and £3 for every slat. I don't want to know that. I don't care about that. I don't care how much your time is per hour. I care about what you're going to do for me and what it's going to cost me. What's the bottom line? Because if you tell somebody I charge, £30 an hour, the very next question to you is going to be, how many hours is that going to take? It means absolutely nothing. I do quite a lot of inputs on pricing. And one of the examples I use is pick and mix. Because it's something everyone understands. You go and you grab a handful of fudge and you stick it in a bag. The first time you know what that's going to cost you is when you get to the counter. They'll tell you it's 89 pence per 100 grams, but they'll never put the scales there. And that's the same as charging an hourly price. You give people half the equation. If they ask how long it's going to take, then you probably give them a figure off the top of your head. The problem comes now is you've given them a price. And essentially what I see bookkeepers do is they'll say it'll take about 5 hours. So you've used the worst pricing method and then you've given an estimate. And then when it takes you 8 hours, you're too scared to go back and say, it took me 8 hours. So essentially you end up saying, I'll just charge you for the 5 hours. So you've used the worst pricing method and then you've cut your throat by charging less hours than you've done. Much, much better is offering a fixed price or a menu price where you offer 3 options and let the client choose between them. And there's loads and loads of psychology behind why you should use 3 prices. But I could talk about this for an hour and a half, and we don't have that long. What I'll say is if anybody's really interested in pricing, let me know and I'll give you access to one of the recordings of one of the presentations I've done in the past about that.
Thanks, Chris. I had an inkling you might have been quite passionate about that. Natasha, feel free to disagree with Chris, but how do you go about pricing up a job?
I changed from hourly straight away after I started my business. I recently had a really interesting call with a prospect who was insistent that the way that I priced was not right for them and they wanted an hourly rate. When I gave them a figure out of my head, she had a really rude answer to me saying that as I was only a bookkeeper, why was I charging her more than somebody who was classed as an accountant? But then the job that I was doing was accountancy. It wasn't accounting, it was bookkeeping. It was bookkeeping transactions and bookkeeping bank reconciliations. And this is what I specialise in. So you get that comeback at you because people will argue, why are you doing this? And I totally agree with Chris on pricing. Pricing should be about valuing you, your knowledge, your services, the time it's taken you to acquire this knowledge, the fact that you know the software inside out, you're the one who contacts HMRC when things go wrong, you're the ones who contact the software provider. This is all in the pricing that you're giving them. The hourly price does not reflect that. It really does not reflect that. Nobody ever should be given an hourly price for any jobs they do in bookkeeping or accountancy, honestly.
All right, Natasha clearly didn't disagree with Chris. That seems to be the consensus. That's right. So next question I've got, and this is the first thing when I first set in practice, someone went out straight away, bought a copy of Sage, stood outside PC World and bought that. Chris, if you were setting up in practice today, what software would you get, if any?
I hate to hark on about it, but it comes down to your ideal client. You know, if your ideal client is all online and you know the separate business bank account and all the invoices and receipts are being received online, then it makes sense to have some sort of online cloud-based software that can connect with that. It makes sense to use something like Auto Entry or Receipt Bank or Dext or HubDoc to be able to use all of that information and streamline your practice. Another reason why hourly pricing doesn't work, because everything is out there to streamline us and make us quicker, make us more efficient. Equally, if it is a small cash-based business, a window cleaner, then there's absolutely no point setting up QuickBooks or Xero for them. It is far too big, far too powerful. They're never going to use all the features. You might as well use something like VT Transaction, which was always my go-to software for really small businesses. So make your decision based on who you want to work with. As Natasha said, they're all free trials. Go and try them. Find what works for you. I find that people either go down the Xero route or the QuickBooks route. You find very few bookkeepers. Natasha rolls her eyes there. I saw that. I take it she doesn't like QuickBooks. But that's what you find. You find you either love one software and hate the other, or love that software and hate this one. And then there's others out there like Free Agent, which is really good for construction, really good for CIS, works really well for them. And if you've got a NatWest account, you'll get Free Agent for free because it's owned by RBS. So yeah, pick the right tool for the right job. Don't say, you know, what's the old phrase? If your only tool's a hammer, then every problem's a nail. Pick the right tool for the right job, depending on the client that you want to work with.
Really useful stuff. Thank you. Natasha, now I know you're a massive fan of technology. What software do you use and why?
My favourite bit of software is Dex. So formerly Receipt Bank, I have Receipt Bank, which I have the Prepare and the Precision. So the Prepare is where all the receipts come in electronically, or I scan them in and they get processed into transactions where you can push them through to your software, or export them like I do for my smaller clients straight into a CSV file, into an Excel spreadsheet. And then the Precision analyzes the accounts. So it tells me on QuickBooks and Xero, all the transaction data, whether there's missing transactions, whether there's bank reconciliation errors, things like that. I don't have a special accounting package, to be honest. I have equal amounts of Xero and QuickBooks and Free Agent clients. I kind of let them choose whatever suits their needs and what they need out of it. It's more benefit to them having the right software than me producing it, because they're obviously looking for the report side of things. They're looking for what works for them. Like Chris said, with Free Agent, most of them use it because they get it free with NatWest or Metal. For me, as long as it works with Receipt Bank Dex, I'm quite happy to use whatever software they do. And I think that's probably where I'm a bit different to other bookkeepers, because a lot of bookkeepers are specialised in either QuickBooks or Xero, whereas I kind of find that I'm specialising in bookkeeping rather than the software. I think you're sort of not losing out on clients there. It could be the right client for you, but on the wrong software. Well, what's wrong with that? You're losing their clients because of it.
Right, thank you. So, which moves on to my next question. If you had, obviously no one's got an unlimited amount of money, but if you have a set amount of money and you could only buy 3 things for your practice, what 3 things would you spend hard-earned cash on? Chris, do you want to start us off?
You don't need as much to start up a practice as you used to. If you go back a few years, then you needed loads. Now, if you've got a laptop with internet access, you can run a fairly successful practice. Years ago, I would have told you that you needed a landline because mobile numbers didn't look permanent and people didn't trust mobile numbers. But now you think about it, people do. Everybody uses a mobile. Everybody's got a mobile number everywhere. A laptop is what you need. And what I would say is invest in your mailing list. Invest money in building your mailing list. If I lost everything that I've got today, I could start again tomorrow because I've got a list of email addresses of bookkeepers around the UK who want to use my services. I could develop a package tomorrow and I could email them and I know that I would get back on track. So yeah, I would say spend money developing your email list because they're the people who are ultimately going to buy from you. So laptop, email list, that's 2 things. A good chair. I've got a bad back, so I always need a good chair.
Yeah, I like that one. Very important. Natasha, if you're going to spend money on 3 things, what 3 things would you buy?
It's got to be a laptop with dual screens. I cannot work without 2 screens at least. I actually have 4, but we won't go into that because it is big on your efficiency. A decent scanner. You will get crappy receipts off clients that will refuse to actually upload the receipts into extraction software. So a scanner is a must. Personally, I have a ScanSnap because it's just above and beyond the rest of them. And finally is an extraction software, which is, I'm talking of either auto entry, Datamolio, Dex, anything like that. HubDoc, I wouldn't use because it's rubbish. But Dex and auto entry is kind of like the leading ones. That to me, as a bookkeeper, is like your main entry point for your software. You can do a lot of work in those softwares before it even gets to the accounting package, or extract it like I do. I extract a lot of my stuff straight into Excel spreadsheets by using Dex, because for me it's saving money. Like Chris saying, you don't have to have fancy software for some of the smaller clients. I have really good working spreadsheets that Dex gets their receipts, extracts it, and bank statements, puts it into the spreadsheet, and bank reconciliation, here I go. It's really quite, those are the 3 things I would definitely have, but definitely dual screens at least. It's the efficiency thing of having 2 things. It's amazing.
And just 2 follow-on questions. It's probably only me who's thinking this, but what is a ScanSnap, and why do you feel HubDoc isn't great?
Okay, ScanSnap isn't amazing. It is a scanner that does 40 pages a minute, both sides. It eats pill receipts like anything, and just it converts it so quickly. You can do a great big folder in probably a couple of minutes of receipts. The only thing it doesn't like is staples, so I give all my clients staple removers as a welcome gift, as signing up to me. It's a bit of a quirky thing, because it just eats them data, scans it, and you can transfer it straight into Dex for me, and convert it within an hour. And that's pile of paperwork sent back to the clients. I don't have the room to store paperwork for people. If I can scan it and go, it's amazing. HubDoc is free when you have Xero. HubDoc is a lot of work in progress. It's not quite there yet. Xero is great. HubDoc lets it down at the moment. There's a lot of errors with it. Compared to auto entry and Dex, it's just not quite there at the moment, and it is free with Xero for a reason. That's all I'm going to say. I didn't go for the cheapest. I actually pay a lot of money for Dex a month. That is over £300 a month for the 2 softwares I have with them. But for me, that is my primary entry, and that's what should be accurate to make sure that everything else slots into place. HubDoc, I found there was quite a few errors that I couldn't contend with.
Yeah, thank you. Richard's asked a really good question of Natasha. So to be awkward, I'm going to ask Chris of it first. What do you think clients think of the situation where you've got a bookkeeper and accountant? Do they think they're paying twice or not?
So what I'll say is, it didn't work for me. It's not the model that I went to. I didn't work with limited companies. I worked only with sole traders, and I offered a one-stop shop, because ultimately what I felt they wanted was to get to that self-assessment. That was why they were doing the bookkeeping. I've worked with hundreds of bookkeepers over the years, and I know that many of them follow the same model that Natasha does, where they work closely with 1 or 2 or 3 accountants, and the clients love it. It comes back to who your client is. If your ideal client is a really small sole trader, then perhaps that's not the way to go, having an accountant and a bookkeeper. If your client is slightly larger, then they will get most out of having a bookkeeper and an accountant. The bookkeeper is there for the day-to-day stuff. The accountant's there for the strategic overview. And if you can get a client to understand the benefit of having both of them and having a team approach to their accounts, if one person misses it, the other will pick up on it. If one person doesn't understand a particular software, the other will, and they can work together to get the best result for the client. That's if you've got a good accountant that you work with. There's plenty out there that are not quite so great. So if you're going to go down that route, make sure the person you work with has got a good reputation. It goes back to what Natasha said earlier about interviewing clients, interview partners as well, because ultimately you're hanging your reputation on this person's doorknob, and you don't want to hang your reputation on somebody that's going to ruin it.
Yeah, thank you. And go back to the person who the question was actually asked of. Natasha, how do you find that management relationship where there's a bookkeeper and the accountant and the client?
Okay, for me, the accountants I deal with tax sides. They kind of don't even deal with the software. They just extract the trial balance into whatever they've got, Iris, I suppose, to do their tax returns. So a lot of my companies are bigger companies that are growing, that I do the bookkeeping for. So a lot of them don't even do the making tax returns. They don't even know, they don't do like the VAT returns quarterly and things like that. So I kind of concentrate on areas that they don't even do in their practice. So they full confirmation statements, they do all the year-end stuff, they do the tax planning. Whereas I concentrate on the day-to-day bookkeeping. It's the day books that I look after, kind of thing. When you go into your level 2, it's the day books that I look after for them, and the VAT return. So for me, that's how it's worked, because it is services that accountants shy away from, and they charge a lot more money to do it because they don't like doing it. A lot of them really just don't like doing it. They love the tax planning, they love the tax efficiency things they do for them, the year-end reports, but they don't actually like doing this kind of bookkeeping transactions. Where for me, I pride on myself and being passionate about doing bookkeeping. I absolutely love it, and I love when things go wrong because I love unraveling it, I love unpicking it, I love doing 60,000 line bank reconciliations and finding the missing penny, whereas they would absolutely go mental. It's all about having a big jigsaw and everybody fits the right piece to make the full picture. And I think Chris mentioned that it's about the full picture, whereas my clients are probably not sole traders. They're probably sole traders that go in limited, bigger ones, online retailers and things like that that are growing, that need kind of that segregation of duties to put some checks and measures in as well. It's always good, like you say, to have checks and measures to make sure that nothing's missed. If one person's missed something and so on, it's just about the balance. And this is why you should run your business how you want to and stick with what you're passionate about. Otherwise, you'll find your own direction. And I think that's where you really need to concentrate on.
Right. Thank you. I've got a question, Chris. I get asked this nearly on a weekly basis. Well, the first question is, how important do you think actual experience is before you set it up? And if you do think it's important, how do you get that experience?
Okay, so I probably fly in the face of public opinion. I started my practice without any formal experience. My background was in community work and youth work. I did manage a couple of credit unions, but that was as close to finance as I got, other than doing accounts at school, and didn't take it on because my mum says to me, "You're really good at accounts, you should do that." And I was in a rebellious stage, and I was like, "No, I'm not doing that." So I started my practice with no experience. What I'll say is that it's a double-edged sword. And actually, I had this conversation with in my podcast a couple of weeks ago with another bookkeeper who also started with no experience. You are very unsure of everything that you do, so you're forced to constantly check things. But I think that if you take on work that you're confident with, I started off with a mobile DJ and a window cleaner, and I only took on work that I was confident with, and then I grew as my experience grew. It's really difficult to get experience if you don't have experience. Quite a lot of people say, I'll go and volunteer for a bookkeeper. But most bookkeepers have got so much on their plate that they don't really have time to babysit somebody, because essentially that's what it becomes. And I know that you're offering your services for free, and are probably really hurt that people are refusing it, but folk are busy and they just don't have time to do that. I think if you start slowly and you start with really small clients that you can do, And as Natasha said earlier, have places that you can go for help and support, that you can ask questions. On that though, I would say you've got more response if you ask a question and give what you think the answer is first. So rather than saying, how do I do this? Say, I've got this client, they want this, I think I should do this, is that right? You'll get a far better response than if you just say to people, how do I do that? I said it was a double-edged sword. So the pro for starting without experience is you don't have any bad habits. You've not picked up bad habits from anybody. The reason that I charged the way I charged was not because I thought I'm going to do the opposite from what everybody in the profession was doing 14 years ago. It was because I didn't know any better. I didn't purposely set out to, shake the profession about. I just didn't know. So I started with fixed price because that's what I thought I would want if I was buying my services. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. What are your thoughts on experience, Natasha?
The only experience you're going to get is if you actually do it. I totally reciprocate what Chris says. You've got to get out there, start small, build that confidence up. I totally get what you're saying about the question. Have a guess. If you don't know it, logically think, how would you do it? I mean, I know we all study from textbooks, but these textbooks are written for a reason. They do have the solutions. Maybe they don't quite work in real life because technology has taken over what we've learned in the books, but it's the underpinning knowledge of all of our essential bookkeeping and accountancy theory. We both run fab Facebook groups. We both have so many supportive members that will, generally you'll find the same ones lurking in the groups all the time, just itching to help somebody because they love helping people. Never be shy away. Even I ask stupid questions now, and everybody tells me off for saying I'm going to say a stupid question. But to be in practice, doing my own practice for a while now, every question I think it's silly, but somebody else who's too quiet and too shy won't ask that question, thinking, yes, somebody's asked that. That's the answer I want to know. So it's kind of thing. Don't be afraid to reach out, but get on with it. The only experience you're going to get is actually going out there and saying, come on, I've got this qualification. I really, really, really want to use it. Kind of sell your services, basically. Get out there and start doing it.
Thank you. If anyone's got last minute questions, we've only got 9 minutes left and someone needs my Zoom account at 6 o'clock, so we'll finish at 6 o'clock on the dot. In the interest of balance, what are the downsides of working for yourself, Chris?
The buck stops with you. There's nobody to, supportive Facebook groups are really, really good, but ultimately you need to make the decision. You need to decide whether you're going to take that client on. You need to work through problem clients. You need to look at the transaction and decide whether a suspicious activity report needs to be filed on that client. There's nobody to ask. And as supportive as family are, unless they've run a bookkeeping practice or accounting practice before, they're probably going to be as supportive as they can be, but it's not going to be of any great use. They're not going to be able to help you think through that. Being self-employed, for all it's really fun and it's exciting and it's challenging and it's rewarding, it's also really, really scary and really, really lonely as well. It is the most lonely job in the world, being self-employed. Have the supportive groups and make sure you take care of yourself as well as your clients, I would say.
Well, thank you. Like I say, last 5 minutes, you've got a question, get it in now. Natasha, what do you say are the downsides to working for yourself?
Virtually the same as Chris. It's very lonely. You are responsible for everything. You are every role in your business. So this is where Chris mentioned marketing, everything. You are the marketing leader, you're the HR manager, you're everything. You're the tea lady. So it's just balancing out how much stuff you have to do. And remember, you do have great days, but you also have blooming bad days. And it's all about resilience, getting up after those bad days and proving you're only human. And of course, reciprocate what Chris says, Facebook groups are fab. We both have 2 fabulous Facebook groups, use them.
Thank you. I also just asked me a question, specifically for you, Chris. After a wobbly start, would you have gone back and tried to start it on the side rather than giving everything up if you try again? Chris?
Well, I did do it again. I did do, I went from the bookkeeping practice, which was called Ayrshire Accountancy, to the Bookkeepers Alliance. And I did give my practice up, and I did give everything up again and started again from scratch on something that I didn't know would work. I started my bookkeeping practice back up again last year. It was as a challenge that I was doing with my members of my group. It wasn't specifically because I want to be doing bookkeeping again. I've done it. I don't really want to do it again. I loved it, but it was a time in my life that's now passed. So no, I think that if you believe in yourself and you believe in your idea, then give everything up and give it a go. You know, take that risk. Because if you don't give anything up, and it doesn't matter if this idea works or fails, then what motivation have you got to make sure it works? So no, it was a challenge. It was horrible. I cried a lot, but I would do it again exactly the same way.
Thank you. Very last chance for questions. Natasha, one last one, and apologies I didn't prep you in advance. If you had one take-home message for someone who's considering working for yourself, what would you say?
There is plenty of work out there. People are crying for bookkeepers and accountants at the moment with the enforce of making tax digital going into the next stage next year. Go out there, do it, study, grab every opportunity. Like I say, every day is a learning day. Don't make excuses not to do it. Find the excuses to do it, and keep that. Find what your why is and hold that value at all times. Once you know what your why is, why you're doing it, that will be your passion all the way through to succeeding.
Right, thank you.
Can I just add to that, Nick? Actually, what Natasha says is absolutely right. There's plenty of work out there. When we started the Bookkeepers Alliance, we thought, well, bookkeepers really buy into this because we're all competition essentially. But they support each other because there is more than enough work to go around. We're coming out of a pandemic. We're probably going to be going into a recession. It's an amazing time for bookkeepers and accountants, a recession. It's terrible for the economy. It's terrible for everybody else. But we see a huge number of redundancies. We see a huge number of new self-employed people. We see a huge number of people starting their own companies. It's a great time to be a bookkeeper and an accountant right now.
Thank you. And that very nicely segues, almost as if by magic, into Jessica's question about Brexit. How has that affected the profession? Chris?
I've not really noticed any impact, other than I can't get my printing very quickly. It comes from Germany and it takes about 2 weeks for printing to arrive. I've not really noticed that Brexit has had any huge impact on the profession. But then I'm not doing bookkeeping day to day. I'm relying on what other people tell me. Natasha's probably best placed to answer this one.
What do you think, Natasha? Have you had any issues with Brexit?
Horrible with things, imports and exports. It's a minefield because I still don't think the HMRC know what they're actually asking us to do. You read one post from HMRC that contradicts the next post, and you can't get the data for their links to work to pull off the import statements. And so it's interesting. They can't blame COVID for so long now. Something has to be fixed because we're not getting the right information, and yeah, it's a nightmare at the moment, but I think it's a work in progress. I think they're trying to juggle everything at the moment, and they still went ahead with it with all the COVID restrictions.
Thank you. I've just been sent a message. I think thank you, Chris and Tasha, for everything you've done. It's inspiring and really, really motivating. We have 1 minute left, so if you've got a question, now is the time. But I just would like to thank both Chris and Natasha for spending their time, sharing their experiences, sharing their story, and I found it really, really useful, and I hope you have as well. I think in the chat there has been all the links to the Facebook groups. I'm going to link to Chris's website. When we send out the recording, I'll make sure that all the information is given in that as well. But yeah, everything just seems to be, thank you. It seems to have gone really well received. It's probably the highest turnout we will have this session. And I just want to say again, thanks to Chris and Natasha for being here.